So I'm flying along one day in a Beechcraft Bonanza, and I've got everything lit up. I've got the iPad, and it's got approach plates on it. I've got XM weather radar on a handheld GPS with radar painting on it, and I've got the iPod going with the tunes thing going, and I'm listening to Creedence Clearwater Revival, and everything's great. And all of a sudden, I start getting this big racket in my headphones, and I can't hardly hear anything. I can't hear air traffic control. If I key the mic, I got feedback. It's a total mess. So, like normal, I look over all this rat's nest of wires running across the cockpit, everything, look at the cigarette lighter, and lo and behold, I got the culprit to the noise making in the radio is this little cigarette lighter adapter. Now, the cigarette lighter adapter should be good because I bought it at the convenient market that I go to every morning when I buy my coffee on the way to work. And I know the owner of the store, and it's a Chinese-made little trinket that you plug in your cigarette lighter. And knowing this guy, he buys the good Chinese parts. He doesn't buy the bad Chinese parts. So I really can't figure out what's going on here. Well, the FAA has just recently revised Advisory Circular 91-21-1C. And this is about portable electronic devices aboard aircraft. Now, there's several different types of electronic devices that are categorized in this advisory circular. One of them is things like electronic flight bag, and the iPad is certainly something related to that. It's not a certified electronic flight bag, but I've got my approach plates and I'm doing that thing. Another group is medical devices, and so there's passengers who carry a supplemental oxygen tank or something like that. Those are also considered portable electronic devices. Those are life-sustaining PEDs. Another group of PEDs is things that broadcast, and that would be things like mobile phones, cell phones. And we all know that the FCC has restrictions about broadcasting using cell phones from aircraft. I'm talking a handheld cell phone, iPhone, or whatever you want to call it. The FAA studied this over all the years. This goes back to the 60s. And so, you know, one of the things that brought all this up is you're flying along in your DC-6 and you don't feel like shooting a GCA approach, so you're going to fly the NDB into someplace, mountains on both sides. So you're flying the DC-6 down the path of the NDB, and there's some guy in the back of the airplane listening to a transistor AM radio, and he's listening to WLS Barn Dance, and meanwhile your needle's going all over the place and it's running you into a mountain. So the FAA determined early on that personal electronic devices needed to be banned, and that's some of these regs that we find in 91.19, 91.21 talks about bans on passengers using electronic devices. We've studied this over the years. The FAA has done study after study, and they did it in the 70s, they did it again in the 80s, the 90s, and all that. And so now we're at this point where a lot of personal devices are allowed inside an airplane, and even the passenger airlines are doing that. The beauty of this advisory circular 91-21 is there's some processes in there that help us determine whether something's going to cause us some kind of grief, the radio interference and noise. In fact, as a flight crew member, we're required to determine before we allow the use of electronic devices that they can be operated safely and that they're not going to make radio noise. So 91-21 alludes to a lot of this. And I think it's a good time that a lot of us go back and look at this. And we've gotten so used to running cords all over the cockpit. One of the other things I've found doing some annual inspections on airplanes is the cigarette lighters. A lot of these airplanes are old and the cigarette lighters are in bad shape. So 91-21 is something worth looking at. I think it's time that everybody needs to take inventory of what they're doing in the airplane with all these devices all over the place. It's time to look at loads and what kind of power consumption that we're doing on here, and it's also time to look at noise and to test these radios on the ground for noise in the glide slope or noise in the localizer bands and certainly radio noise, because these things really can be a safety hazard. And like a lot of things we take for granted in aviation, it's always when something bad happens that we try to close the barn door after the horse got out. Thanks for watching.